There comes a point in every investigation, every series, where you hit something so staggering, so completely off the rails, that you have to stop. Just stop and regroup, because if you don't, you risk losing the forest for the trees, or in this case, the killers for the chaos. This is Rocky Mountain Reckoning, and today we're doing things a little differently again. We're taking a detour from our usual format. No deep dive victim cases, no timelines, no autopsy reports, no unmarked graves, or at least not in the way that you're used to. Instead, we're stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. And trust me, it is one ugly damn picture. Because the truth is, what we've uncovered in the course of researching these Great Basin victims, those lost to remote deserts, lonely highways, and forgotten motels, is that the region wasn't just dangerous, it was infested, absolutely crawling with serial killers. We're talking about a rogues gallery of douchebags, dirtbags, drifters, and depraved opportunists, all circling the same region, and worse yet, often at the same time. You want to feel creeped out? Try realizing that from the mid-60s through the late 90s, you couldn't toss a cigarette butt in parts of Nevada, Utah, or Wyoming without hitting some asshat dumping a body in the brush. These weren't just one-off killers either. These were active predators, confirmed and suspected, moving through the same mountain passes, parking in the same gas stations, drinking at the same dive bars. Some of them had patterns, others just fed off convenience and chaos, and all of them left a trail of destruction in their wake. And look, I don't throw this kind of episode into the mix lightly, but it became clear that if we're going to make sense of what happened to the women that we've covered so far, Tammy, Star Valley Jane Doe, Devil's Gate, Thousand Springs, all the victims from last week, hell, maybe even more that we haven't even named yet, we have to understand what they were up against. Because it wasn't just one killer out there. It's a whole damn infestation. There's no polite way to say it. The Great Basin during that area was a serial killer superhighway. You had Dale Wayne Eaton snatching women in Wyoming and keeping trophies in his yard like some kind of Walmart Hannibal Lecter. You had Ted Bundy prowling in Utah and Idaho, charming women into his Volkswagen and leaving bones in Wasatch. Gerald Gallegos and his equally demented wife were abducting girls near casino towns. Bobby Jack Fowler was working construction sites across Nevada and turning up in cold cases across borders. Joseph Naso, Israel Keys, Scott Lee Kimball. I mean, where do you even start? These weren't just freak occurrences. This was systemic, overlapping, and horrifying, and it changes the way that we have to approach these cold cases. Because if there were 5, 10, maybe even more serial killers with ties to the same geographic corridor, then we've got to reframe the entire era. And yeah, that makes things messier, but it also makes them make more sense. And let me be very clear here. I have no interest in giving any of these low-rent monsters the spotlight. This is not about glorifying some twisted mythology of evil geniuses. These weren't criminal masterminds. They were shit stains with tools and opportunity who thrived because no one was connecting the dots between counties, between states, between victims who were too young, too poor, too alone, or simply too invisible to matter to the systems that were supposed to protect them. I have absolute unfiltered disdain for these people. They're not fascinating. They're not complex. They're cowards, parasites. And the fact that so many of them got away with it for so long, well, that's a stain on every jurisdiction that shrugged and said, yeah, looks like she ran off. So today, we're going to pause, step back, and take a long, uncomfortable look at the landscape of fear that defined this region for over 3 decades. Because before we can truly investigate who might have killed our victims, we have to face the fact that the suspect pool is a damn sea, and it's filled with more than just rumors. While serial killers operated nationwide during the 1970s through the 1990s, the Great Basin region, particularly Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho, saw a disproportionately high concentration of transient, undetected killers. Unlike urban hotspots like Los Angeles or New York, where serial crimes often triggered media and investigative pressure, the Great Basin offered remote geography, jurisdictional gaps, and a steady flow of vulnerable populations. Perfect conditions for predators to operate with near impunity. It's not that there were more serial killers born here. It's that this region let more of them roam free for longer. In other words, it doesn't just seem that way. It was that way. This is the episode where we take inventory, where we call them out by name, where we show you clearly, apologetically, that this wasn't just bad luck or coincidence. It was an epidemic of predation. So grab a drink, you're gonna need it, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why we had to stop the narrative, pull the handbrake, and say, wait a second, how many of these bastards were out there? So let's count. Hey Angela, how's things going tonight?
Things were a hell of a lot better before you opened that door.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy. It's a bit crazy.
I'd like to change my answer and see what's behind door number 2, please.
Yeah, you and me too. I would like to change that answer too. I mean, this one totally caught me off guard. You know, I know that we had multiple serial killers working in the area at the time, but as I started digging, I was like, holy shit, they're all here, for crying out loud. I mean, yeah, who are we missing? The son of Sam and freaking Richard Ramirez? Right. Everybody else is in Wyoming and Utah.
Right.
It's insane.
I mean, H.H. Holmes might as well be here. Come on.
Yeah, it was nuts. So, I don't know. So, I had to change things up a little bit because, you know, we've said all along that we had multiple killers work in the area. That hasn't changed, of course.
Yeah.
We've said that from the very beginning. It's just how freaking many of them there were and everything that was going on.
Were they having conventions and shit? Like serial killer conventions?
Must have been. They must have been.
Damn.
So,
I'd like to know who booked that, because I have some words for him.
Yeah, I'd like to go after him. But before we jump in, I think we do have to talk about the fact that we have some breaking news in a case that, well, a couple of cases, you know, we haven't even gotten to her episode yet, but we have mentioned her multiple different times, and that is Sheridan County Jane Doe or I-90 Jane Doe.
Right.
And the good news is that she was identified this week, and through genealogical DNA, it was discovered that her name was Cindy Arlene Estrada, and she was born in Torrance, California, and was 21 years old when she died. And, you know, her episode will still remain the same. It's, you know, we're scheduled to cover it when we get to it. Mm-hmm. And she was killed in 1993. And so we're in the early 80s now. So we have a few more to get to before we get to her. But it's kind of crazy how we decided to jump into this series and then all this stuff started happening. So now both of the Jane Does from Wyoming that that are linked to one particular piece of shit have been identified. They were both Jane Does for a long time. You had Bitter Creek Betty, who was found in Sweetwater County the same year, 1993. She was identified a few years ago as Irene Vasquez. And then now Sheridan County Jane Doe just this week was identified.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, really great news. And then we have some bad news.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad and good.
It's bittersweet.
It's bittersweet. So we pretty much know the piece of shit that killed these two, and we're going to be talking about this asshat tonight. But that is Clark Perry Baldwin, who is definitely a serial killer. His DNA were found on both of these girls, and he most certainly killed them, raped them and killed them. He was convicted for killing a woman by the name of Pamela McCall in Tennessee, and he was supposed to be facing justice in Wyoming and being sent from Tennessee to Wyoming.
Which they made it sound like long enough ago he should have already been here.
I thought he was already here, but apparently...
No, not you made it. They made it sound...
Yeah, I thought that he was already here, but come to find out he wasn't. He was in Tennessee. The piece of shit died this morning. This is Friday, July the 18th, and this son of a bitch died of a heart attack, which, you know, I'm glad he's gone. I'm glad that he can't hurt anybody else, but it really sucks that the son of a bitch spent his entire life victimizing women. Yeah. And then once he is set to face justice for his crimes, the piece of shit has a heart attack and dies. Yeah. I don't know.
And did we get all the information we needed from him?
Oh, hell no.
That's what I'm...
Oh, yeah. Hell no. You know, this piece of shit, you know, he didn't do it. Somebody, yeah, no. And there's no way, because I think he has a number of bodies tied to him, and we'll never know. I mean, hopefully we can link more of them through DNA, but there's no way to ever know how many. I mean, we saw what he did with the two victims here in Wyoming, and he did the same thing with Pamela McCall in Tennessee, which was rape them, murder him, and then roll him out of his truck on the side of the road. And
just
so
disgusting.
If his DNA wasn't left, or if, you know, the department that found the bodies hasn't had it tested yet, or it wasn't found, we'll never know. And as we've found anything out this season so far, women's bodies being kicked on the side of the road was not that freaking rare. So who the hell knows? Yeah. Could, you know, any of our Jane Does that we've talked about? I mean, you know that I highly suspect Eaton in the Elko Jane Does, but who the hell knows? It could have been somebody like this piece of shit or another piece of shit. As we're going to find out today.
Well, it's definitely another piece of shit.
Oh, yeah. And as we're going to find out tonight, we had pieces of shit coming out of the woodwork in this area during this period of time. So are you ready to jump into this bit of Wyoming chaos?
I guess.
All right.
I mean, tentatively, yes, but...
So welcome, listeners, to Dark Dialogue, Rocky Mountain Reckoning, the podcast where we unravel the shadows of the human mind and dive deep into the mysteries that haunt small towns and big cities alike. I'm your host, John.
And Pamela, and alongside John, we're here to explore stories that keep you up at night. Tales of mystery, betrayal, and the kind of truth that doesn't just linger, it festers.
Each episode, we go deep into the cases that refuse to stay buried, the voices that still echo through the canyons, the truck stops, and the windswept roads, and the questions no one wants to ask because the answers are just too damn ugly.
So normally I say grab your headphones, but this time I'm going to say lock your doors.
Yeah.
Pour a stiff drink or a glass of wine, dim the lights, and settle in, because this is Dark Dialogue. And tonight we're stepping into something a little different.
Angela, you know, like I said in the opening, this episode is not what we originally planned. You know, we were going to dive deep into another victim story, you know, talk about some case maps, discuss the patterns. And then the pattern got bigger and uglier and more dangerous than we thought.
I do have a bright side for you, though.
Yes.
Do you know the amount of times in this episode you will get to be unfilteredly handing out the ass hat and the douchebag?
Oh, man. Yes.
Yes, there's no filter tonight on this one.
No.
It's filter-free Friday.
There absolutely can't be a filter on this one. I mean,
so that's the bright side, is 100% John unscripted.
This is true. Yeah, of course, you kind of get that all of the time.
I know, but
I'm not
you do calm it down a little bit because we have reverence for the victims. Well, this one, we're just talking about all the piles of shit. So,
unfortunately, with as many piles of shit as we have to talk about, it means we have a lot of victims to discuss.
Well, I know. I'm just saying.
A lot of victims to discuss. So, I didn't really have you dive into any location details or anything for this show because, I mean, let's be honest, it would have been overwhelming, frankly. You know, we're talking about a whole freaking list of douchebags, and they come from all over the freaking place. They're transients. They've been all over the freaking world and back. So, you know, the idea that I could
all the shit in their wake.
Right. The idea that I could have had you dig up location information relevant to all these pieces of shit is just totally unrealistic. It would have taken you forever. So we're just going to jump in. So let's not pretend that this guy needs an introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway, if only so we can drag his name through the gravel where it belongs. Ted Bundy, the so-called charming killer, the media's favorite psychopath, a walking, talking, narcissistic shit stain who smiled for cameras while dumping bodies across half the country. But what they don't talk about enough is this. Bundy didn't just haunt Seattle or Florida. He'd put down roots right here in the Great Basin. Utah, Idaho. He hunted here. He killed here. He was arrested here. The myth says he was brilliant. The truth? He was lucky, and law enforcement was slow. So today, we're torching the pedestal because in this part of the country, Bundy wasn't a headline. He was a local threat. So let's get into it. So when we're talking about this piece of shit, we got to start at the beginning. So January through March of 1974 were his first known attacks, and that was in Washington State. So he was living up there in Seattle, and he begins his murder spree with a string of disappearances in Washington. So those victims are Joni Lentz, January 4th, 1974. She survived an assault in Seattle. She was beaten, sexually assaulted with a metal rod.
Oh.
So not a Great Basin victim, but still. Then we have Linda Ann Healy, February 1st of 74. She was 21, abducted from the University of Washington dorm in Seattle, and her skull was found in 1975. Then we have Donna Gail Manson, March 12th, 1974, 19, abducted from Evergreen State College in Olympia. Body was never found. Then we have Susan Elaine Rancourt, April 17th, 1974. She was 22, abducted from Central Washington State College in Ellensburg. Her remains were found in 1975. Roberta Kathleen Parks, May 6, 1974, in Oregon. She was 20, abducted from Oregon State University in Corvallis. Her remains were found in 1974. Brenda Carol Ball, June 1st, 1974. 22, abducted from Burien, Washington. Skull was found in 1975. Georgianne Hawkins, June 11th, 1974, Washington. She was 18, abducted from University of Washington, Seattle. He confessed to her murder. Her body has never been found. Janice Ann Ott, July 14th, 1974, Washington, 23, was abducted from Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. Her remains were found in 1974. In August of 74, this piece of shit moves to Salt Lake City for law school. So he enrolls at the University of Utah Law School and begins attacking local women shortly after his arrival. His victims in Utah: Nancy Wilcox, October 2nd, 1974. She was 16, abducted from Holiday, Utah. He confessed to that. Body was never found. Melissa Ann Smith, October 18th, 1974. She was 17, abducted from Midvale, Utah. Her body was found October 27th, 74 in Summit County. Laura Ann Aim, October 31st, 1974, Utah. She was 17, abducted from Lehi, Utah. Body found November 27th, 1974 in American Fort Canyon. Carol DeRoche, November 8th, 1974, Utah. She was 18. It was an attempted abduction in Murray, Utah. She escaped and then testified against this piece of shit. Deborah Jean Kent, November 8th, 1974, 17, abducted from Bonneville, Utah. He confessed. Her partial remains were found in 1975. Obviously, all of these are Great Basin murders. And then August 16th, 1975, the piece of shit is arrested in Salt Lake City. He was pulled over during a suspicious driving stop. The police find a ski mask, rope, handcuffs, and an ice pick in his car, and he's arrested for evading arrest. And then he bonds out. And so from January to April of 1975, he goes to Colorado, and his victims in Colorado: Karen Eileen Campbell, January 12th, 1975. She was 23, abducted from Snowmass Village in Colorado. Her body was found February of 75. Julie Cunningham, March 15th, 1975, 26, abducted from Vail, Colorado. He confessed to her murder. Her body's never been found. Denise Lynn Olverson, April 6th, 75. She was 25, abducted from Grand Junction, Colorado. He confessed to her murder. Her body's never been found. May 6th of 1975, he goes to Utah, and his victim there is Lynette Dawn Culver, and that was on May 6th of 75, and she's 12, was abducted from Pocatello. He confessed to her. Body's never found. June 28th, 1975, Susan Curtis, 15, abducted from Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. He confessed to her. Body was never found. February of 1976, the piece of shit is convicted of kidnapping in Salt Lake, found guilty, and sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. And then in January of 77, he's transferred to Colorado for the Karen Campbell murder trial. That's in Aspen. And then June 7th of 1977 is his first escape attempt, where the piece of shit jumps out the second-story law library window during a recess and hides in the mountains. He was caught 6 days later. December 30th, 1977 is his second escape, where he escapes through a hole in the ceiling of his cell. He travels undetected to Florida and then begins his final murder spree, which is outside the Great Basin. So January through February of 1978, he's in Tallahassee and Lake City, Florida. Margaret Elizabeth Bowman, January 15th, 78, 21, killed in the Chi Omega sorority, Florida State University, Tallahassee. Lisa Levy, January 15th, 1978, 20, killed in the Chi Omega sorority, Tallahassee. Kathy Kleiner, January 15th, 1978. She survived the Chi Omega attack. Karen Chandler, January 15th, 78. She also survived the Chi Omega attack. Cheryl Thomas, January 15th, 78, also survived near the Chi Omega house in Tallahassee. And then Kimberly Diane Leach, February 9th of 78, age 12, was abducted from Lake City, Florida. Her body was found April 1978. So in 1980, the son of a bitch is convicted of murder in Florida, sentenced to death for the rape and murder of the 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. And in 1989, the son of a bitch is put to death in the electric chair. So he confessed to over 30 murders, but likely committed over 100. Like we said, he was executed. The crowds outside were celebrating. They had signs that said, "Burn, Bundy, burn." They had buttons. They had shot fireworks off. They had Bundy burgers. I mean, it was a big celebration. I'm not all about that. I think it's kind of gross, but I can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this freaking guy was an animal.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about his connection or potential connection to the Great Basin. Obviously, he has a connection. We know that he killed women in the Great Basin states.
What was the whole theme, though? If he confessed, there was no body. Like, every time you said he confessed, no body found. He confessed, no body found.
That was because a lot of...
huge theme there.
Yeah, that was because a lot of them where the bodies were found, they pretty much knew it was him, but they had a bunch of missing girls, and we're like, what about this one? And he's like, yeah, I killed that one.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't necessarily like because they were linked. It was more like, we know the son of a bitch killed the ones where the bodies were found, but he confessed to the ones where they weren't. He confessed to over 30.
But refused to say where those bodies were.
No, I mean, he really did. How do I say this? Like, I don't want to make the guy sound like he really did kind of work with the FBI and stuff once he was in prison. Once it became obvious that he was going to die. But the biggest problem was the son of a bitch played a game with it, and he strung it out as long as he possibly could. And then when it was, his death warrant was signed and he was going to die, then he tried one last attempt and then started confessing in the hopes that the governor would at least prolong his execution, if not stop it altogether, so that he could work with the FBI to find all these bodies. And the governor of Florida was like, no, piece of shit, we're done with you. You're dead. And they put him to death. I think that if they would have allowed him to continue to play his stupid little games and travel around the country and point out bodies and stuff, he probably would have. But it really is a tough situation, and you find yourself in these situations with these asshats over and over again. Do you play their game to find the bodies, or do you not? Because for them, it's like a vacation. Yeah. And and you've seen it happen over and over.
Oh, yeah.
So many of these guys, they string it out as long as they can. And then a lot of the son of a bitches, after they've traveled around on the government's dime and looked at all these locations, turns out they're just making it up. They didn't have anything to do with it. They're just trying to get a free trip and get out of jail for a week or whatever. So I don't know. It's really hard to say what the right thing is to do.
Right.
But I can say I feel 100% better knowing this son of a bitch is dead than he's in prison and could potentially escape again.
Right.
Or harm another prisoner or whatever. We know this animal can't hurt nobody else. And for me, that makes me sleep a little bit better at night.
Okay.
But we know that he traveled through the Great Basin states. And, we talked about last week the Rawlins rodeo murders in 1974. And we also talked about the fact that I feel really confident that Royal Russell Long is a really prime suspect. But Bundy has been eyed for those killings ever since 1974. And he is still a major suspect in those Rawlins rodeo murders. And then he's also suspected of Anne Marie Burr, August 31st of 1961, who was 8, abducted from Tacoma, Washington, and she is suspected as Bundy's first victim. He would have been 14, but
Jeez.
We don't know. He's also suspected of Lisa E. Wick, June 23rd of 66 in Washington. She survived, but he's suspected. He's also suspected. I mean, I'm going to stop saying he's also suspected and just go through these names because it's a shit ton. Lonnie Trumbull, 23, 1966, Washington. She was killed in Seattle. Rita Curran, July 19th, 71, in Vermont. 24, killed in Burlington, Vermont. She's suspected due to Bundy's presence in the area in 71 in Vermont. Joyce LePage, July 22nd, 71, Washington, was abducted from Washington State University. Rita Lorraine Jolly, June 29th, 73, Oregon. She was 17, abducted from West Lynn, Oregon. No body found. Vicki Lynn Holler, August 20th, 73, Oregon. 24, abducted from Eugene, Oregon. No body found. Catherine Mary Devine, November 25th, 73, 14, abducted from Seattle. Body found. Brenda Joy Baker, May 25th, 74, Washington. 14, abducted from Puyallup, Washington. Body was found. Sandra Jean Weaver, July 1st, 74, 19, abducted from Salt Lake City. Body found in Colorado. Carol Valenzuela, August 2nd, 74, Washington. 20, abducted from Vancouver, Washington. Body was found. Nancy Perry Baird, July 4th, 75, Utah. 23, abducted from Layton, Utah. No body. I mean, so when we're talking about this piece of shit in the Great Basin, we have 6 confirmed Great Basin victims. We have 5 in Utah. Then we have Idaho and Colorado, and then we have at least four that he's suspected of in the Great Basin, with the Rollins Rodeo murders in 74. And then we've also got 2 more, so we've got at least 6 in the Great Basin that he's suspected of, with Sandra Jean Weaver and Nancy Perry Baird in Utah. So, and this son of a bitch killed by bludgeoning, strangulation. We know he has at least over 30 victims. And like I said previously, likely over 100. We'll never know.
Jeez.
But yeah. So that's that piece of shit. And, you know, he's a serial killer where you mention the name, everybody knows who Ted Bundy is. He's gotten probably more publicity than all the other serial killers combined. And I don't know, he's always talked about as this handsome, smart guy. I mean, first of all, I don't think the dude is handsome. And if you ever watch him making a total ass of himself when he stood at as his own lawyer in Florida,
yeah,
the guy's a freaking moron. I mean, is he smarter than, you know, somebody that has an IQ of 75? Well, yeah. I mean, he was a law student. He sure wasn't an idiot, but he wasn't like this brilliant, you know,
prodigy.
Yeah, he wasn't. He just really wasn't all that. All right. So then next we have
Richard Ramirez.
No,
That's not Ramirez.
Rodney Acala.
Oh, okay.
Also known as the dating game killer or the dating game predator. He was active from 68 to 79, possibly longer than that. He has 8 confirmed victims, with estimates that range from 30 to over 130. He died in prison in 2021. Thank God and hallelujah we get rid of another piece of shit. So if Ted Bundy was the golden boy of serial killer media hype, Rodney Acala was the grease-stained game show version. The creeper hiding in... Literally. The creeper hiding in plain sight with a camera and a fake smile. This guy wasn't just dangerous, he was theatrical. A wannabe photographer, a contestant on the dating game in the middle of a murder spree, and behind the charm, pure predatory rot. What they don't tell you is how far he traveled, how many states, how many victims, how many families still don't know what happened. And yes, that includes places like Idaho and Wyoming. The Great Basin wasn't some scenic detour. He was part of the hunting ground. He didn't just kill, he posed them, he photographed them, he collected their images like trophies, and many of these women still haven't been identified. Many of these women. So, let's talk about Rodney Alcala, the pervert with a Polaroid and a body count, and the shadows that he left behind in the basin. So 1968 is his first known attack in Los Angeles, California. He attacks and rapes 8-year-old Talee Shapiro. She survives. Alcala flees and ends up on the FBI's most wanted list. This begins his years of transcontinental evasion. So again, we got to go through his list of victims. So number 1 is Cornelia Michael Creeley. June 12, 1971, 23, a TWA flight attendant. She was strangled in her Manhattan apartment. Her body was found June of 1971. He was convicted of her murder in 2011 because of DNA and bite mark evidence. Ellen Jane Hover, June 4th, 1977, 23, aspiring orchestra conductor, was abducted from Manhattan. Her remains were found in 1978 on Rockefeller Estate, New York. Alcala was convicted in 2011, linked because of his appointment book listing E. Hover. Jill Terry Barcombe, November 9th of 77, 18, was a runaway from New York, found strangled and bludgeoned on a Hollywood Hills fire road. He was convicted in 2010 because of DNA and jewelry that was found in his storage locker. Georgia Marie Wickstead, December 16th of 77, she was 27, a nurse, raped, beaten, and strangled in her apartment. He was convicted in 2010 because of DNA and semen evidence. Christine Ruth Thornton, June 77, Sweetwater County, Wyoming, was 28, from Hancock, Michigan, living in San Antonio, Texas. She was 6 months pregnant, was photographed by Alcala on a motorcycle near Granger, Wyoming. Her remains were found April 6th of 82 by a rancher, was identified in 2015 through DNA and Sister Kathy's recognition of Alcala's photo. He was charged in 2016, but then the charges were dropped because the piece of shit died. Charlotte Sue Lamb, June 24th of 78. 31, legal secretary, raped, beaten, and strangled in a laundry room. He was convicted in 2010 because of DNA and jewelry found in his locker. Jill Ellen Parentu, June 14th, 1979, Burbank, California, was 21, computer key punch operator, raped and strangled in her apartment, convicted in 2010 because of DNA and blood evidence. Robin Christine Samso, June 20th of 79, Huntington Beach, California, 12, abducted while biking to ballet class. Her remains were found July of 1979 in Sierra Madre foothills. He was convicted in 1980 because of witness testimony and jewelry evidence. Those are his confirmed victims. And then his suspected victims: Pamela Jean Labson, October 31st of 77, San Francisco. She was an aspiring singer, last seen at Fisherman's Wharf after meeting a photographer who is believed to be Alcala. Her body was found in 77, strangled in Marion County. And Joyce Gaunt, February 17th of 78, Seattle, Washington. She was 17, found strangled in a park, suspected due to Alcala's travel in Seattle in 78 and victim profile. An unnamed woman in the photo collection, and this one is, I don't know what to think about this one. So his freaking collection of photographs is extensive, to say the least. It numbers well over 1,000. Huntington Beach police have released like 110. I have gone through them several times. I'm trying to match up. Apparently, when he took pictures of Christine Ruth Thornton near Granger, Wyoming, he also took pictures of another woman. And so you look through these pictures and you're trying to match up the backgrounds, sagebrush plains and stuff. And there's so many freaking pictures, and so many of them are taken in places that may or may not be, I don't know. But apparently there's an unidentified woman in this collection of photographs, and it was suspected to have been taken very near the same site in Granger, Wyoming in 77. But we don't know anything more about this. And, for those listeners that have family members that went missing during this same period of time, these pictures are, at least like 110 of them are on the internet. And I think almost all of those 110 are unidentified. We don't know if they're victims or if they're not victims. We just know that this piece of shit had pictures of them. And at least the one in Wyoming was identified by her sister and confirmed. I mean, her body was found in that area. So she was a Jane Doe for the longest time until her sister recognized her photo, and then they put everything together and realized who she was and that he had her picture in his collection, and it had to have been just shortly before she was murdered because it was in Wyoming, and she was not from Wyoming. Like I said, she was from San Antonio, so she was traveling through, I can't remember where she was headed, but she was on a trip and somehow ran into this piece of shit, and he killed her. And so, if there's somebody that's missing people from that period of time, I encourage you to look through those photos and see if your missing loved one is in there. And Huntington Beach Police Department apparently has like however many thousands of pictures. So who knows?
So he was taking pictures before he killed them?
Yes.
And then after?
I don't know about after, but before.
Okay.
He like posed as a photographer, and that's how he got a lot of these women to trust him, was by saying that he was a photographer and he was gonna take pictures, make them famous, blah 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 blah. And so
okay, I remember that part. I just couldn't remember if he did the pictures before and after.
I'm not aware of any after. There is one picture that I saw from his collection where this woman is like hanging upside down. She looks very uncomfortable. I don't know if I don't know, because you're just looking at pictures. There's no context.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them, a lot of them are like laughing, having a good time. Most of them are smiling. You can tell that they're not, feeling threatened at that period of time. So I think it was all his ruse. And he's not the only piece of shit that he has used that ruse over the years, but maybe most successfully, because we're talking thousands. Then at least he photographed. I seriously doubt that he killed thousands, but he's suspected in over like 130. So his numbers could be, and it was a very long period of time. It was years that he was out hunting. So,
right.
And then, like I said, on July 24th of 2021, the son of a bitch died. So, sayonara. I mean, I got nothing good to say about him. I'm super happy that he's dead. And if that makes me a bad person, so be it. I'll take it.
I'm not going to argue.
And then there's evil. And then there's Gerald and Charlene Gallego, a predator couple, a sadistic duo, and absolute proof that monsters don't always hunt alone. Gerald was already a walking red flag, an ex-con, a serial rapist, and just an all-around bottom shelf excuse for a man. Charlene, she was college educated, soft-spoken, and yet somehow thought being his personal kidnapping assistant was a good use of her time. Together, they lured young girls into vans using fake job offers or the promise of a ride. What followed was brutal sexual assault, torture, murder. And it didn't just happen in California. One of their victims was last seen in Lovelock, Nevada. Her body was found dumped in a shallow grave in the desert. That's Great Basin soil. And it matters because this wasn't a random spree. This was a systematic, coordinated string of murders that spanned California, Nevada, Oregon, and beyond. And Charlene wasn't some battered, broken puppet. She was an active participant until the walls closed in. So, when we talk about danger in the Great Basin during the late 70s, the Gallegos weren't just passing through. They were operating, and their story is one of the darkest chapters in this already brutal landscape. Let's break down how these two asshats did what they did and how many lives it cost. If you want a walking case study in unrepentant human garbage, meet Gerald Armand Gallego. By the time he was 30, Gerald had already racked up a criminal resume that would make a parole board puke. We're talking about armed robbery, burglary, assault, rape, you name it. He was the son of a convicted murderer who was executed at San Quentin, and instead of learning from that, Gerald seemed determined to outdo him, a real overachiever. His entire life was about domination, hurting people, controlling them, using violence to feed whatever empty pit of entitlement he carried around. He wasn't a genius. He wasn't charming. He was just violent, manipulative, a control freak asshat who knew how to lie, threaten, and overpower. But here's the thing. He didn't become a serial killer alone. He needed someone to help him lure the victims, someone people wouldn't suspect. And then he met Charlene. Now, if Gerald was the hammer, Charlene Gallego was the velvet glove that handed it to him. Charlene was smart, a straight-A student, upper middle-class background, college educated, not exactly the resume that you'd expect from a woman who would go on to help kidnap and murder young girls. But somehow, she traded ambition for obsession, specifically obsession with Gerald. When they met in the late 1970s, Gerald was twice divorced, twice convicted, twice the age of someone that she should have even talked to. But Charlene wasn't repelled. She was hooked, and she quickly became his accomplice. Together, they developed a routine. She would help lure the girls, teenagers, often hitchhikers or girls at a mall, by pretending to be friendly, offering them jobs or rides. Once the girls got in the van, Gerald took over. The assaults, the murders, the dumping of bodies in remote places, including right in Nevada. Charlene claimed that she was abused and scared, but make no mistake, she helped, she enabled, and she only talked when the walls came down and she needed a plea deal.
Yeah.
They weren't soulmates, they were co-conspirators, and the blood on Gerald's hands, well, she helped spill it. Gerald Gallego died of cancer in 2002 while on death row at Nevada State Prison. And this is a tough one. As hard as it may be to stomach, which is hard as hell, Charlene Gallego was released from prison in 1977 after serving 16 years and has since changed her name and disappeared from public view. So,
Wonderful.
let's talk about their known and confirmed victims. Kippy Vaught, September 11, 1978, Sacramento, California, was 16, was abducted with Rhonda Scheffler from the Country Club Plaza Mall. Charlene lured them into a van with promises of marijuana and money. Gerald raped them repeatedly in Baxter, California. The next day, in Slow House, California, Gerald struck Vaught with a tire iron and shot her in the head with a .25 caliber pistol. When she moved, he fired 3 more shots, killing her. Her body was found in a ditch. Rhonda Scheffler, 17, was abducted with Kippy and went through the same hell that Kippy went through.
I can imagine.
The sad part about these is, they were abducted together and one watched what happened to the other one, knowing what was coming. Then you have Brenda Judd, June 24th, 1979, Reno, Nevada, age 14, was abducted with Sandra Colley from the Washoe County Fair in Reno. Lured by Charlene with promises of earning money distributing flyers, Gerald raped them in the van while Charlene drove to Humboldt Sink, Nevada. Gerald forced them to perform sexual acts, then beat Judd to death with a shovel and buried her in a deep hole. Her remains were found November of 99 by a tractor operator. Sandra obviously was kidnapped with Brenda. The same kind of awful shit went on there. Stacy Ann Redican, April 24th, 1980, Central Heights, California, was 17, abducted with Carol Chipman Twigs from the Sunrise Mall, Citrus Heights, California. Charlene lured them into the van. Gerald sexually assaulted them, then bludgeoned both to death with a hammer in Limerick Canyon, Nevada. Their bodies were found July 27, 1980. Linda Teresa Aguilar, June 6, 1980, 24, and was 4 months pregnant. She was hitchhiking in Port Orford, Oregon, accepted a ride from the Gallegos. Gerald threatened her with a .357 caliber revolver, raped her, struck her with a rock, and strangled her with a nylon cord, buried her in a shallow grave, possibly while she was still alive. Her body was found June 22nd, 1980. Virginia Mulkel, July 17, 1980. She was 34, abducted from the parking lot of the Sail Inn in West Sacramento, where she worked as a bartender. Gerald and Charlene, acquaintances of Mokel, waited after closing. Gerald raped her at their apartment, then strangled her with a nylon cord while Charlene drove to Clarksburg, California. Her body was found October of 1980, bound with cord loops indicating strangulation. Craig Miller, November 1st, 1980, 22, abducted with his fiancée, Mary Elizabeth Sowers, from Sacramento Shopping Center after a fraternity party. Gerald forced them into the car at gunpoint with a .25 caliber Beretta, shot Miller 3 times in the head near Bass Lake, California. His body was found later. His fiancée, Mary Elizabeth Sowers, was abducted with him, like we said. Gerald raped her in their apartment, then shot her in Placer County, California, in a field. Her body was found near Loomis, still wearing her dress from the party.
Jeez.
Then his suspected victims. The Gallegos are suspected in additional murders, with one strongly linked case in Nevada. Sources suggest up to 11 additional victims, with the following being suspected. Sandra Butler, June 1978, Reno, Nevada. Unknown age. She was likely a teenager. She disappeared while biking at the Washoe County Fairgrounds in Nevada, where the Gallegos were present. Authorities believe that she was their first victim, lured by Charlene, but neither confessed and no conviction occurred. Her remains were never found, but foul play was suspected. So these couple of freaking animals, I mean, the fact that she was released from prison pisses me straight off. Yeah. She played the victim card and she helped locate some of the bodies.
Yeah.
And she did 16 years. Now, would she ever killed anybody if it wasn't for him? No, probably not. And is she going to go out and kill people? No, probably not. But the bitch helped kill a lot of girls in awful ways. And she should have died in prison at the very least for what she did.
Yeah, getting to change your name and start over.
Yeah. And we're not talking about somebody that was beaten and forced to do this shit. She did it of her own accord.
Absolutely disgusting.
Warren James Bland isn't a household name, and frankly, that's the way cowards like him prefer it. No spotlight, no nickname, just a predator hiding in the cracks. But make no mistake, he was dangerous. A convicted rapist, a drifter, and a suspected serial offender who left a trail of violence from California to Nevada to Arizona. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Bland was bouncing between prison cells and parole boards like a human ping pong ball, and every time he got out, someone got hurt. He didn't kill for headlines. He killed because he could. And like so many of the predators we're cataloging in this stretch of the series, he didn't need attention. He needed access, and the system gave it to him. His confirmed kill, a 14-year-old named Stephanie Ann Newsom, abducted, assaulted, and murdered in Sparks, Nevada in 1983. Bland was convicted years later thanks to DNA, but there are other cases, unsolved and eerily similar. Near the rail lines and the highways, he traveled regularly. And let's just say the math doesn't feel like coincidence. So no, Warren James Bland isn't famous. He's just another reminder that for decades, the Great Basin wasn't just neglected, it was infested. Warren James Bland is currently serving a life sentence in Lovelock Correctional Center in Nevada for the 1983 rape and murder of the 14-year-old Stephanie Newsom. So let's get into the evidence. Bland was convicted of 2 murders and is strongly linked to violent sexual assaults, primarily targeting women and children in California and Utah. His confirmed victims, based on convictions, are as follows. Beyond the one that we already mentioned, Angela Pratt, October 9th, 1980, Salt Lake City, 15, abducted while walking to school in Salt Lake City, Utah. Bland sexually assaulted, tortured, and strangled her. Her body was found in a remote area. He was convicted in 1983 based on physical evidence, the blood type, hair samples. And then Phoebe Ho, December 11th of 1986, South Pasadena, California, age 7. Abducted while walking 4 blocks to school in South Pasadena, California. Bland kidnapped, sexually assaulted, tortured, and strangled her. Her body was found December 18th, 1986, in a ditch in Glen Avon, Riverside County, California. He was convicted in 93 based on blood type, hair samples, and carpet fibers matching Bland's van. The jury recommended the death penalty. Sentencing was set for May 28, 1993. Bland died in prison in 2001 of natural causes. Then his suspected victims. Wendy Osborne, February 1st, 87, Placentia, California. 14, abducted while walking to school. Found strangled near Chino, San Bernardino County, about 30 miles from Phoebe Ho's body. Bland was the prime suspect due to the similarities. Ruth M. Ost, 1987, San Diego, age 81, suspected in her slaying in San Diego. Limited details are available. Bland was named as a suspect by the San Diego police, but no charges filed due to a lack of evidence. Her age deviates from Bland's typical young female victims, but his violent history includes attack on women across the board. And then several unspecified additional victims from the 1980s up through 93. So this guy's all over the freaking place. He's tied to Nevada, possibly Utah. I mean, he's a freaking animal. That's just all there is to it. And then this son of a bitch is even hard to discuss.
As if any of them were easy.
This guy's worse than all of them. If there's a face for failure in the American justice system, it is Samuel Little. 90 plus confessions, nearly all of them backed by evidence. And yet this guy spent decades floating through arrests like a ghost, assaults, rapes, murders, and walking out the front door over and over again. Samuel Little is now considered the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. And how did he do it? He targeted the vulnerable, women on the margins, sex workers, drug users, women of color, the people law enforcement barely looked for and rarely believed. And yes, he made his way to the Great Basin, Nevada and Utah, cold cases in Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and possibly Salt Lake City bear his signature. Strangulation, no obvious signs of a struggle, dumped in secluded areas, and his hand-drawn maps, they included Nevada highways and unnamed victims he remembered by face, but not by name. He didn't need headlines. He needed opportunity. And the basin, disconnected jurisdictions, remote towns, transient populations gave him exactly that. Samuel Little didn't operate in the shadows. He was ignored in plain sight. And the cost? Dozens, maybe hundreds of dead women. Samuel Little, thank God, died on December 30th, 2020 at the age of 80 while serving a life sentence without parole at the California State Prison, Los Angeles County. Let's break down how that was even possible. So, his confirmed victims, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because, there's a shit ton. So, Mary Jo Brosley, December of 71, age 33. Let me just say that the guy pretty much killed the same way across the board, strangled and left their bodies. So I'm not going to go over it on each one of these. So Linda Bennett, 82, Los Angeles, California, 38. Carol Efford, 82, Los Angeles, California, age 41. Guadalupe Apodaca, 1982, Los Angeles, California, age 46. Audrey Nilsen Everett, August 14th of 89, age 35. Unidentified black female, 1982, Las Vegas, Nevada, estimated 20 to 30. Unidentified black female, 1982, Las Vegas, Nevada, estimated age 25 to 35. Unidentified black female, 1982, Las Vegas, Nevada, estimated age 20 to 30. Patricia Parker, October of 87, Chattanooga, Tennessee, age 30. Mary Ann Jenkins, 1991, Chicago, Illinois, age 32. And then, the guy drew pictures of his victims.
Yeah.
And then police would take these pictures and try to find a matching body or missing person. He confessed to murders in 19 states, with over 50 of them being confirmed by the FBI. Beyond the named victims that I just went through, confirmed cases from 1965 to 2000 include 16 in California, 8 in Florida, 6 in Ohio, 4 in Mississippi, 3 in Texas. Other states with confirmed victims are Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, New Jersey, New Mexico, South Carolina, and Tennessee, averaging about 1 to 3 victims per state from 1970 to 1997. And then he is tied to the Great Basin, definitely with his Las Vegas, Nevada killings, and very likely Utah. So his confessions include 93 murders, with 43 unmatched as of right now due to missing remains or vague details. But it's suspected that this piece of shit killed from 1965 to 2000, and on a pretty continual basis. And so, it's so bad. I can't remember what state he was in, but he was strangling a woman in his back seat, and the cop pulled up, and he was able to convince the cop that it was a prostitute he was just arguing with.
Jeez.
I mean, it's insane how this guy was let just slip through the cracks and continue to kill for all those years. 65 to 2000. And so, how did he become the most prolific serial killer in the United States? Time. I mean, he killed for that many years. And the biggest thing that he had going for him is he was always on the move. So he was killing in one state, and then he was on to another state. But the piece of shit, if you look into him, he had a girlfriend that helped him and knew what he was doing and was with him on several different occasions. I mean, it's unreal. And then as we move on, if there was ever a case that screams, how many bodies are we not finding? It's Larry Hall. Soft-spoken, awkward, Civil War reenactor by day, suspected serial killer by night. Hall is one of those creeps who almost faded into the background until investigators started connecting dots, dozens of them across at least 11 states. And yes, that likely includes Nevada and Utah and Wyoming. He confessed to killing as many as 40 women, then recanted, then hinted there were even more. His MO? He'd abduct women from small towns, fairs, college campuses, rape, strangle, dump, disappear. And because he worked as a janitor and traveled for reenactments, he could pop up anywhere, do unthinkable things, and vanish without leaving a trace. Larry Hall is currently serving a life sentence in Butner Federal Correctional Institution in North Carolina, but not for murder, just for kidnapping. And yet, law enforcement believes he may be one of the most prolific serial killers in modern U.S. history. So let's dig into the dark, scattered trail of Larry Hall and what might still be hiding in the basin. Larry Hall was convicted of one murder and is strongly suspected in up to 40 to 50 others, primarily young women across the Midwest and the Great Basin states. His confirmed victims are limited due to his recanted confessions and lack of physical evidence in many cases. So following is a list of confirmed victims and organized chronologically with the Great Basin areas and specifically Wyoming ties. So Jessica Lynn Roach, September 23rd, 1993, Georgetown, Illinois, was 15, abducted while riding her bicycle near her home in Georgetown, Illinois, found strangled and sexually assaulted on November 8th of 93 in a cornfield near Perrysville, Indiana. Hall was convicted of her kidnapping in 95, not her murder due to lack of direct evidence. And then his suspected victims are Naomi Lee Kidder, which she has her own episode coming up in this series. She was 19. She was last seen hitchhiking from Rawlins to Buffalo, Wyoming, after staying at a Travel Lodge hotel. Her remains were found September 10th, 1982 in Natrona County, Wyoming, strangled with a wire ligature. She was identified in 93 by dental records. Hall is the prime suspect due to a document that was found in his possession with her name on it. His presence in Wyoming during 1982, and his MO, strangling young women and leaving them on highways. No charges were filed due to his recanted confession and insufficient physical evidence. Then Tricia Lynn Reitler, March 29th of 93, Marion, Indiana, was abducted while walking from her dorm at Indiana Wesleyan University to a store in Marion. Blood spots and her clothing were found nearby, but her body was never located. Piece of shit confessed to her murder, describing abducting and killing her near a reenactment site, but then he recanted. Lori DePease, August 19th of 92, Menasha, Wisconsin, disappeared after leaving her job At Fox Valley Mall, her car was found in a parking lot with the driver's door open. Piece of shit confessed to abducting and killing her, claiming he dumped her body in a river, but then he recanted. Wendy Felton, 87, Indiana, age 16, disappeared from Marion, Indiana after leaving home to meet friends. Piece of shit confessed. Then he recanted. Unidentified victims in the Great Basin states from the 80s to the 90s. Hall confessed to murders in Nevada and Idaho, targeting young women near reenactment sites or highways, but provided vague details and recanted. No specific victims named beyond Kidder. His travel along I-80 through Nevada and Idaho has been documented by police, and it suggests possible victims, but no cases are confirmed due to lack of remains or evidence. And then he has unidentified victims nationwide during that same period of time. I mean, this piece of shit is tied. I mean, he could potentially be tied to
He's all over.
who knows how many different victims. Oh, I told you needed a strong drink for this.
No, you couldn't handle it.
All right. So
This guy.
let's circle back to a name that you've already heard on this show, Royal Russell Long. We covered this douchebag the last time, but if we're talking about serial predators who haunted the Great Basin, we'd be remiss not to drag him back into the lineup where he belongs. Long was a trucker, a drifter, and a serial liar who used his job to scout victims across Wyoming, Nevada, Colorado, Oklahoma, all over the damn place. He operated like a lot of these guys did, offering rides, jobs, some kind of promise, and then turning violent the second that he had his victims isolated. He was convicted for the 81 kidnapping and presumed murder of Sharon Bald and suspected in multiple others, including, again, the Rawlins rodeo murders that we talked about when we were discussing Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, 2 Oklahoma girls who vanished from a state fair. And while Wyoming was, at least for some of the time, his home base, his truck didn't know state lines, and neither did his violence. And like too many of these monsters, Long died before facing the full weight of what he did. So yeah, we've talked about him before, but when you zoom out and see how many women went missing along the same interstates that he drove, the picture gets even darker. So we know Sharon Bald age 12, September 19th of 84. We talked about her last week. And then we have the 16-year-old that was traveling with her. Again, we talked about her on last episode. We talked about most of these on the last episode, so I'm just going to run through them pretty quickly.
Okay.
Charlotte June Kinsey, September 26th of 81 from Oklahoma. She was 13. She was abducted with her friend, Cindy Paulette. And Cindy Paulette was also 13. They were abducted from the Oklahoma State Fair. So very reminiscent of our conversation in last week's episode. Charlene Ann Brown, we remember her from Rawlins. She was 19. Carolyn Celeste Eaton, aka Valentine Sally. We talked about her last week. She was 17. She was last seen alive at the Monte Carlo truck stop in Ash Fork, Arizona. We have the whole list of victims in Rawlins that we talked about. We have Belinda May Grantham from last week. We have a number of then unidentified victims in Wyoming, Oklahoma, Colorado, Missouri. I mean, every one of these pieces of shit, it's like you read through one, you could just apply the same thing to every one of the bastards, because they literally just drove around the country killing girls and women. David Leonard Wood is the kind of predator who'd thrive in silence. No headlines, no flashy trial, just a growing list of missing women and a desert full of shallow graves. Wood operated out of El Paso, Texas, but his proximity to New Mexico and southern Nevada and his connections to transient communities and sex workers pull him directly into the orbit of what we're calling the Basin Killers. His MO, It fits the pattern that we've seen over and over again. Vulnerable women, often young, often on the margins, abducted, raped, strangled, and dumped in remote desert terrain. In 1987, 6 women vanished from El Paso. Their remains were found in shallow graves in the desert, and Wood was eventually charged with killing them. But there's more to this story than 6 victims. The timing, the method, and the proximity to I-10 and I-25 corridors, routes that bleed directly into the Great Basin, make him a suspect in disappearances across state lines. And when you look at his history of rape convictions before the murders, it's clear this wasn't an escalation, it was a continuation. David Leonard Wood isn't a question mark. He's a damn exclamation point. A serial predator hiding in plain sight and possibly with more bodies still waiting to be connected. He's been sitting on death row in Texas since '92, appealing, stalling, and wasting air. Let's talk about what we do know and what we still don't about the desert burial ground killer. So he was convicted in '92 of murdering the 6 girls and women in El Paso. And like we said, their bodies were found in shallow graves. And his confirmed victims are Melissa Alans, March 7th of '87, age 13, in El Paso, Texas. Desiree Wheatley, June 2nd of '87, El Paso, Texas, age 15. Karen Baker, June 5th of '87, El Paso, Texas, age 20. Angelica Fasto, August 8th of '87, age 17, El Paso, Texas. Rosa Maria Casillo, August 12th of '87, El Paso, Texas. Dawn Marie Smith, August of '87, El Paso, Texas. She was 14. Wood is suspected in the disappearances of 3 additional girls in El Paso in '87 whose bodies were never found. These cases are strongly linked due to Woods' pattern, witness testimony, and proximity to his confirmed victims. And they are as follows. Marjorie Knox, February 14th of '87, Chaparral, New Mexico, age 14. Cheryl Lynn Vasquez Dismukes, June 28th of '87, El Paso, Texas, age 19. Melissa Alans, March 7th of '87, El Paso, Texas, age 12. So this piece of shit, who even knows? I mean, I just said the same thing on each one of these bastards.
Who knows?
Who even knows?
Who knows, yeah.
And yes, we're back to Dale Wayne Eaton, because honestly, how could we not be? At this point, Eaton's practically the house villain of this series. He's come up in every episode, and for good reason. If the Great Basin had a face carved into the side of a cliff to represent everything that went wrong out here in the 80s and 90s, it would be this reclusive, violent, manipulative shitbag glaring out over a junkyard in Wyoming. He was convicted of Lisa Marie Kimmel's murder, the one with the Little Miss license plate, and that conviction alone was enough to land him on death row. But you and I both know that wasn't the end of it. He didn't just kill once. He didn't build a hidden bunker for one victim. He didn't collect trophies, stash weapons, and bury bones on accident. Eaton was a predator who operated comfortably in the rural isolation of Wyoming. And the more you zoom out, the more you realize how many disappearances line up, how many Jane Does, how many she probably ran off cases suddenly look a lot more like Eaton territory. And here's the part that still burns. This piece of shit is still alive. The courts commuted his death sentence to life in prison in 2022. No justice for Lisa, no answers for the other families, just Eaton sitting in a cell refusing to talk, dragging the truth to the grave 1 year at a time. So yeah, we've talked about him before. We're gonna talk about him again because there's a pattern to this predator map we're building. Dale Wayne Eaton is the one the rest of them orbit around. So let's keep going. His known victim is Lisa Marie Kimmel. On March 25th, 1988, she was 18 years old and was abducted while driving from Denver to Cody, Wyoming. His suspected victims, Star Valley Jane Doe, 72, Elko County, Nevada. We've already had her episode. Devil's Gate Jane Doe, 72, Elko County, had her episode. He's also a viable suspect for the Rollins murders that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
I put him below Royal Russell Long, but who the hell knows?
That's the theme of our story today.
Yeah. Then you've got Thousand Springs Jane Doe. We had her episode. Naomi Kidder. We brought her up with that last piece of shit, but she was also very near Eaton's orbit. So he's also a possibility for her. And she has her own episode coming up. She's on the list, as well as Shafter Jane Doe, who again is in Elko County, and that was in 93. Her suspected age was 27 to 28. And then he's also probably the prime suspect for Amy Roe Bechtold, who went missing July 24th, 1997 in Lander, Wyoming. So, and then we know that the piece of shit tried to abduct the family. I mean, he's a worthless bastard, just like all the rest of these animals. And I don't think we even have a clue how many bodies are linked to really him or all of them.
Yeah. Oh, this guy.
All right. You know his name by now. Robert Ben Rhoades. We've already talked about him in multiple episodes, and frankly, I hate that we have to keep talking about him. But if we're mapping the predators who turned the Great Basin into a hunting ground, Rhoades isn't just on the list, he's etched into it. The long-haul trucker with the torture chamber sleeper cab, the guy who cruised through Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming like it was his personal buffet line of victims, the one who photographed the fear that he caused like trophies. We've covered what he did, but now we're stepping back and seeing how many highways he owned, how many victims likely haven't been found, and how often his routes lined up with the disappearances we're trying to make sense of. Rhoades didn't stalk a city. He stalked an entire region. His logbook was a map of missing women in the basin. It's covered in red flags. He's currently rotting away in Illinois State Prison on a life sentence. No parole, no second chances, but the damage, that's still unraveling. So yeah, we've talked about Rhoades, and unfortunately, we're not done yet.
Yeah.
So the murders that this piece of shit was convicted of is Candy Walsh, or Patricia Waltz, or Patricia Waltz Ziskowski, because she was a newlywed and she was 28, and we know the piece of shit killed her. He also killed her new husband, Douglas Scott Ziskowski, and he was only 25. Regina K. Walters, February 1990, Pasco County, Texas. She was 14. Ricky Lee Jones, February 1990, unknown age, but he was abducted with Regina Walters. But then we move on to his suspected victims, and those number anywhere between 20 and 50, based on his confessions, his lifestyle, and the evidence that was found in his truck, which were photographs. His pattern targeted young women, often hitchhikers or sex workers, along I-80 and I-10. And so here's the ones that we suspect. An unidentified female between 1989 and 90. He confessed to killing a woman in Nevada, likely a hitchhiker, a sex worker in the late 80s. No specific case or remains have been identified. Unidentified victims in Wyoming. Rhoades documented travel along I-80 through Wyoming, suggests possible victims. No specific cases are named, but his pattern, hitchhikers, young women, aligns with Wyoming's unsolved cases. Unidentified victims nationwide. He confessed to dozens of murders across states like Texas, Illinois, California, Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming, estimating over 50 victims. Evidence includes photos of unidentified women in his truck, some showing signs of torture, and personal items like clothing or jewelry that was not linked to his confirmed victims, suspected in cases like the hitchhiker murders in Texas and California, but no specific names or remains that are confirmed beyond the ones that we already talked about. And now this next piece of shit. So I'm going to read it like I wrote it. And then, like we already said at the beginning of this episode, the piece of shit died today. So yeah. I don't know. If I drank, I think I would be headed to the bar to celebrate after this, that this asshole is out of the world.
Yeah.
And that would be Clark Perry Baldwin. So we're going to bring back another name that we've covered before. He was a long-haul trucker and a serial predator, and one more reason that the Great Basin was a death zone for too many women in the 80s and 90s. Baldwin isn't speculation. He's confirmed. Arrested in 2020, decades after DNA finally caught up with him. And of all the places tied to his name, Wyoming keeps coming up. At least 2 women murdered, dumped in isolated areas just off I-90 and I-80, both found in 93. The one of them was just identified this week as Cindy Arlene Estrada. She's been known as the I-90 Jane Doe or the Sheridan County Jane Doe for all of these years, and she was pregnant when Baldwin ended her life and left her off the side of the road near the Montana border. The other one was Irene Vasquez, known for years as Bitter Creek Betty, left in the desert near Rock Springs, discarded like her life never mattered. He's not just charged with their murders, he's the only solid lead that the cases have ever had, and just like with so many of the predators we're profiling, his trucking routes ran straight through Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, right through the dark heart of the basin. And with gaps in his timeline and victims still unidentified, it's hard not to wonder how many more names should be attached to his. The piece of shit's dead. I know I have it written that he's in prison, but in jail, he's not. He's dead. If there's a good thing, he's done with him.
Yeah.
So, but we know that he also killed Pamela Rose McCall March 10th of 91 in Spring Hill, Tennessee. He was convicted of that. And she was found in the woods off Interstate 65 in Spring Hill, Tennessee, near a highway exit. It's the same freaking story. He was also convicted for the murder of her unborn baby because she was 6 months pregnant at the time. You know, I listed these as confirmed victims. Technically, I guess he never stood trial for them. He never was found guilty of them. But his DNA was found on them. They fit his pattern, and that's Bitter Creek Betty or Irene Vasquez, the 2 that we've already talked about. And then his suspected victims, Tammy Jo Zywicki, August 23rd of 92, LaSalle, Illinois, was 21, an Iowa college student, last seen after her car broke down on I-80 near LaSalle. She was found September 1st in 92, stabbed 8 times, raped, and wrapped in a red blanket. Jeez. Rhonda Knudsen, 1992, Williamston, Iowa, age 22, a truck stop clerk, beaten to death during an overnight shift at a Phillips 66 station, found in the store's back room. Unidentified victims across the Great Basin. Baldwin's I-80 travel through Wyoming, Nevada, and Utah, and his patterns, strangulation, sexual assault, highway dumps, suggest possible victims in the Great Basin states. The FBI's Highway Serial Killer Initiative estimates 24 slings that fit his pattern nationwide, including potential Nevada or Idaho cases, although no specific victims have been named other than those that I already talked about. So some serial killers lurk in the shadows. Others hop a freight train and leave bodies from coast to coast. Robert Joseph Silvera Jr., better known as the boxcar killer, was a transient predator who used the American rail system as his personal hunting ground. He wasn't flashy, and he didn't go after headlines. He targeted other drifters, Men like him, riding the rails, living off grid, and often completely off the radar. He confessed to over a dozen murders across multiple states, including California, Oregon, Utah, Kansas, and Wyoming. The victims were usually stabbed or bludgeoned, and their bodies left in train yards, hobo camps, or abandoned buildings, places no one was looking and no one was counting. And that's exactly how he got away with it for so long. His route ran straight through the Great Basin. He spent time in Salt Lake City, Elko, Winnemucca, and Evanston, Wyoming, where in 1995 he murdered fellow rail rider William Pettit in a transient camp. That case finally stuck. He was arrested in Oregon in 1996, but it was Wyoming that made it count. He pleaded guilty to Pettit's murder and was sentenced to life without parole. He's currently rotting away at the Wyoming State Penitentiary in Rawlins. So no, Silvera isn't a household name, but if you lived near a rail line in the basin during the late 80s or the early 90s, he was a ghost in your backyard. And for a lot of his victims, that's all they ever were, ghosts. So let's talk about the trail he left behind and how many more might still be out there. Now, I realize that his victim profile doesn't really fit in with the victims that we're talking about. He killed men, not women. But, you know, when I started discovering all these freaking
He's still killing in our backyard.
He's still killing in this area. And these guys deserve to have their stories told the same as everybody else. So he killed Anthony Garcia, April 9th, 1989. He was 62 years old, found bludgeoned to death in a homeless encampment. Silvera confessed. Darren Royal Miller, July 8th of 92, age 19, found dead in his sleeping bag near a pond in Thompson Springs, Grand County, Utah, with severe head injuries after partying near railroad tracks. William James Clark, April 28, 1994, Tallahassee, Florida. Age 54, some sources say 52. He was a homeless Salvation Army bell ringer, found robbed and bludgeoned to death. Michael A. Garfinkel, August 2nd, 1994, Emeryville, California, age 20, Pierce College graduate, found bludgeoned to death in a hobo jungle near a switching yard. Silvera confessed. Roger Lee Bowman, April 21st, 1995, Salt Lake City, Utah, age 38, found beaten and stabbed to death while walking his dog along railroad tracks in Salt Lake City. James E. McLean, July 23rd, 95, Albany, Oregon, age 50, found stabbed to death in his shack at a homeless encampment. Silvera confessed. Charles Randall Boyd, July 28th, 95, Ellsworth County, Kansas, age 46, found bludgeoned to death in a collapsed tent at Canopolis Lake Campground. He met Silvera's in El Paso, Texas, while building a bunkhouse. Then they traveled to Kansas. Silvera confessed. Pauline Matthews, age 43, found dead in a homeless encampment near railroad tracks. Silvera confessed. William Avis Pettit Jr., December 3rd, 1995, Evanston, Wyoming, 39, found bludgeoned to death in a boxcar in Evanston. Silvera was arrested, found guilty, sentenced to prison for that one. Michael Andrew Kleitz, December 5th, 95, Portland, Oregon, age 24th, found bludgeoned to death near railroad tracks. Silvera's possessions of Pettit's backpack containing Matthews and Boyd's items, and he confessed. And then his suspected victims: unidentified drug dealer, October 95, Arizona. Silvera confessed to killing a drug dealer in Arizona, stabbed or bludgeoned him. Michael A. Brandolino, December 23rd of 95, unknown location. Unidentified victims in Wyoming. Silvera's I-80 rail travel through Wyoming, Cheyenne, Rock Springs, Evanston, and his other activities suggest additional transient victims beyond Pettit, but no specific cases are named. Unidentified victims in Nevada and Idaho, same thing. And then really nationwide, we just don't know. I mean, this guy was all over the freaking place. He jump trains and went everywhere. So who the hell even knows? But again, we can say that about every one of these pieces of shit. So let's circle back to another name that's come up before, Scott William Cox. We've mentioned him in passing, but the deeper you dig, the more alarming his footprint becomes, because Cox wasn't just a violent offender. He was a serial predator in waiting, with every sign of escalation and the trail that cuts right through the Great Basin. Cox was a long-haul trucker, and like so many of the other monsters that we've profiled, that gave him access. Nevada, Utah, Idaho, he drove them all. His confirmed crimes: 2 murders in Oregon in 91, 2 women, both sex workers, both found beaten, strangled, dumped. Classic staging, classic distancing, classic serial killer behavior. He was arrested, convicted, sentenced, and then he served just 11 years. Let that sink in. 11 years for 2 homicides. Then he was released, labeled a predator likely to reoffend, and placed under GPS monitoring. And since then, he's been spotted in Elko, in Reno, in Salt Lake, in Twin Falls, all while technically under supervision. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we've brought up Cox before, and when we lay his timeline over the map of unsolved disappearances across the basin, his name keeps showing up. And that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Let's take another look at where Scott William Cox has been and what might still be waiting to surface. So Rena Ann Brunson, November 24th of 1990, Portland, Oregon, age 34, was found in front of a Safeway store in Portland, severely beaten with cuts to her chin, neck, and back. She was handcuffed and stabbed in the heart. She was found alive, but then died in the hospital. Cox confessed to her murder, citing anger at his girlfriend, and was convicted in 93. Victoria Roan, February 19th, 1991. We don't know how old she was. She was found in a rail yard in suburban Portland, partially clad, tied up with strips of a t-shirt, and strangled to death. Cox was convicted in 93. He pled no contest, and that was based on DNA evidence and other evidence that linked to his truck. He was sentenced to 150 months consecutive for Brunson's sentence, with lifetime post-prison supervision. Give me a freaking break. He's suspected in over 20 murders across the U.S. and Canada, and I'm sure this is growing by the day since this son of a bitch is out running loose right now. Some of his suspected victims: Tia Hicks, April 22nd of 91, Mount Lake Terrace, Washington, age 20, found outside a bingo hall on 220th Street Southwest, Mount Lake Terrace, Washington. Hazel Gelnet, 88, Sammamish County, Washington. Don't know her age. She was a transient found murdered, and Cox is the prime suspect due to his activity in the area at the time. Vicki Lynn Perkins, May 1990, Eastern Utah, found murdered. Part of the Great Basin murders. Cox is suspected due to his Portland residence, trucker routes along I-80 and I-15, and presence in Utah during 1990. Stephanie Douglas, November 1990, unknown age. She disappeared from McMinnville, Oregon, under suspicious circumstances. Cox is a prime suspect due to his location in the area. Unidentified female, May 30th of 91, found alive under a monorail track in downtown Seattle, beaten, bitten, raped with ligature marks, and wine bottles forced places. She survived but refused to cooperate with police and left the state. Cox was linked by a witness seeing her thrown from a Woodland trucking truck, which was his employer. Unidentified victims across the Great Basin from the 80s through 91. Who the hell knows? Victims nationwide. Who the hell knows? Like I said, he's suspected of 20 plus murders. So thanks a lot, Oregon, for letting this freaking animal out.
No shit.
So let's talk about Joseph Naso, a man who lived so deep in plain sight, he damn near vanished into it. Naso was an amateur photographer, we've heard that shit before, an Army veteran, a grocery delivery driver in his later years. Harmless, right?
Yeah.
Except for decades, while quietly living in Reno, Nevada, he was hunting women, posing them, killing them, and writing it all down in a handwritten list of coded, numbered entries that prosecutors would later call his, quote, rape and murder journal. This wasn't a drifter. This wasn't a trucker. This was a guy with a house, a job, and a freezer full of evidence. Literally, when investigators searched his home, they found photos of unconscious or dead women, bags of women's belongings, and that list, complete with eerie entries like, quote, girl in Woodland, or, quote, girl from Miami.
Jeez.
He was ultimately convicted in California for the murders of 4 women between 77 and 94. But here's why we're talking about him. He lived in Nevada for years. He stored evidence there, and law enforcement strongly suspects that he committed additional murders in and around Reno, women whose cases still haven't been solved. Naso's known victims are vulnerable women, often sex workers, often with no immediate family to report them missing, and he didn't operate fast. He spaced his kills out over years, decades even. That kind of patience, that's methodical. That's chilling. And that fits the exact pattern that we're seeing across the basin. He's currently sitting on death row at San Quentin State Prison in California, but some of the women that he killed or photographed may still be unidentified. Some of them may still be tied to Nevada. He wasn't just living among us, he was storing trophies down the hall from his refrigerator. Let's take a closer look at what he left behind. So his confirmed victims, Roxane Ann Rhoades, January 10th of 77, age 18, found strangled near Fairfax, Marion County, California, with pantyhose around her neck and in her mouth. Carmen Lorraine Colon, August 15th, 1978, age 22, found strangled near Port Costa, Contra Costa County, California, with pantyhose around her neck. Pamela Ruth Parsons, September of 93, age 38, found strangled in a remote area of Yuba County, California. Naso was convicted. Tracy Lynn Tafoya, August 14th, 94, age 31, found strangled in Yuba County, California, with evidence of sexual assault. Then we talk about his suspected victims. Nancy Lee Sellers, age 28, found murdered in Sacramento with Naso's DNA on her body. An unidentified female, aka list girl number 3.
Jeez.
Listed as girl near Port Costa on Naso's murder list, corresponding to a 1970s killing in Contra Costa County, California. Diary entries and photos suggest a strangled victim. Unidentified female, aka list girl number 4, listed as, quote, girl near Harrodsburg on Naso's murder list, linked to a 1970s killing in Marion County, California. The entry describes strangulation and dumping. Unidentified female, aka list girl number 6, listed as girl from Nevada on Naso's murder list, tied to a killing during his Reno residence from the 80s to the 90s. Diary entries and photos suggest a strangled prostitute or a transient. And then unidentified victims across the Great Basin. I mean, we could say the same thing on every one of these pieces of shit.
Who the hell knows?
Who the hell knows? So let's add another name to the list of wandering predators who treated the Great Basin like a personal dumping ground. Bobby Jack Fowler. If we're building a Frankenstein out of every red flag law enforcement should have acted on in the 70s, you'd get this guy. Violent temper, long criminal history, meth habit, known for beating, choking, and raping women, and yet somehow he kept getting out. over and over. Fowler was a drifter and a construction worker, constantly on the move, and that's what made him dangerous. Texas to Oregon, and plenty of time spent right in Nevada. He worked odd jobs, carpentry, drywall, roofing, and stayed in cheap motels or labor housing, usually long enough to leave someone bruised, bleeding, or worse. He was officially tied to a 16-year-old girl's 1974 murder in British Columbia thanks to a DNA match in 2012, 10 years after he died in prison. The case opened the floodgates. Suddenly, investigators across the western United States and Canada started looking at Fowler for decades worth of unsolved disappearances and murders, particularly young women who vanished near highways or were last seen hitchhiking. His Nevada connection? Solid. He lived and worked in Elko and Winnemucca at various points in the 70s and early 80s. There are multiple Jane Doe cases in those areas. We've talked about several of them. Bodies found in desert ditches or mine shafts that match his MO to the letter. Brutal, impulsive, often with signs of overkill or sexual assault. Fowler died in 2006 while serving time in an Oregon prison. No confession, no real reckoning, just a decades-long trail of trauma and a list of victims that's probably still incomplete. So yeah, let's talk about Bobby Jack Fowler, because if you're trying to understand how so many women vanished in the basin without answers, this piece of shit is part of the equation. So let's talk about his confirmed victims. Colleen McMillan, August 9th, 1974, Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. Age 16, hitchhiking to a friend's house, found strangled and raped in a logging area. His DNA was matched. Sheila Swanson, July 14th, 1974, Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada. Age 16, abducted with Gallegos while hitchhiking, found strangled and dumped. Fowler confessed. Gallegos, October 1973, age 19, she was abducted with Swanson while hitchhiking, linked to Fowler by Swanson and McMillan DNA pattern. Then his suspected victims. He's suspected in between 10 and 20 murders, primarily on the Highway of Tears in British Columbia, 18 victims, and Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders in California. He's suspected due to his transient lifestyle, presence in the areas, and his MO of strangulation of hitchhikers. Maureen Louise Sterling, February 4, 72, Santa Rosa, California, age 12. Yvonne Lisa Weber, February 4th, 1972, Santa Rosa, California, age 13. Lori Lee Cursa, November 21st, 1972, Santa Rosa, California, age 13. Carolyn Nadine Davis, July 15th, 1973, Santa Rosa, California, age 15. Teresa Walsh, December 22nd, 1973, Santa Rosa, California, age 23. Carrie Ann Graham, December 1973, Santa Rosa, California, age 15. Francine Trimble, December 1973, Santa Rosa, California, age 14. Monica Lohman, 1973, Prince George, British Columbia, Canada, age 16. Pamela Darlene Lamson, 1973, Prince George, British Columbia, Canada, age 19. Unidentified victims in the Great Basin, unidentified victims across freaking United States and Canada. Again, who the hell knows? Let's take a breath. If you're still here, still listening, you've just walked with us through one of the darkest corridors in American criminal history. This wasn't entertainment. This was an autopsy of a region infected with evil. We spent the last however long, dragging the worst this country has to offer into the light. Manipulators, cowards, predators, and sadists, every one of them exploiting the vastness of the Great Basin like it was a goddamn hunting preserve. And make no mistake, these weren't masterminds. These weren't Hannibal Lecters with $10 words and brilliant alibis. These were shovel-brained, impulsive-driven, violence-addicted waste heaps who should have been stopped long before they ever claimed a second life, but they weren't. Because too often, the women they killed didn't fit the profile. Too poor, too brown, too alone, too inconvenient. And so they disappeared, one by one, a pattern buried under paperwork and jurisdictional ego. We've talked about Bundy, Gallegos, Eaton, Naso, Keyes, Rhoades, Baldwin, and more. And the question that keeps pounding in my head is this: how the hell were this many monsters operating at the same time in the same place, and no one was connecting the dots? The answer? Because no one was really looking. Not really. They were content to call them runaways, addicts, prostitutes, transients. They were treated like missing women, not murdered women. And that's how these bastards thrived. Ted Bundy was pulling girls out of Utah with a crowbar while Dale Wayne Eaton was digging bunkers in Wyoming. Gerald Gallegos was abducting teens in Nevada while Bobby Jack Fowler was punching women unconscious in Elko and leaving them for dead. Scott William Cox, Clark Baldwin, Robert Silvera. Pick a stretch of highway in the basin between 1970 and 2000 and I'll show you a predator who called it home. And don't get me started on the ones that we still don't know, the ones who never had a nickname, the ones who weren't caught, because if you think we've named them all, you're not paying attention. This wasn't an anomaly, this was an epidemic, a perfect storm of geography, isolation, law enforcement dysfunction, and a societal neglect. And while these shit stains did the killing, the silence around them let it happen. So no, I'm not fascinated by them. I'm not intrigued. I'm furious. These weren't misunderstood loners. They were walking infections, dragging pain and death across a map, destroying families and leaving nothing but questions in their wake. And the women they killed, well, they mattered. Whether they had 10 friends or none, whether they were mothers, daughters, sex workers, students, runaways, or just in the wrong place at the wrong time, they deserved to be protected. They deserved to be found, and they damn sure deserved to be remembered. That's why we do this. That's why we keep coming back to the basin, even when it's exhausting, because someone has to say their name out loud. Someone has to remind the world that they were more than crime scene photos and coroner's reports. They were human, and they were hunted. The men that we talked about today, they don't get to be mysterious. They don't get to be legendary. They get to rot in memory, in prison, or in the ground. And we keep talking. We keep pulling the threads. We keep showing up because there are still stories buried in the basin, and we're not done yet. Before we end this episode, I want to take a moment, not for the monsters, not for the case numbers, but for the names, the people, the victims. These are the ones we've spoken about today. Some confirmed, some suspected, but all worth remembering. From Ted Bundy's Trail of Terror, Linda Ann Healy, Donna Gail Manson, Susan Elaine Rancourt, Roberta Kathleen Parks, Brenda Carol Ball, Georgianne Hawkins, Janice Ann Ott, Nancy Wilcox, Melissa Ann Smith, Laura Ann Aim, Deborah Jean Kent, Karen Eileen Campbell, Julie Cunningham, Denise Lynn Olverson, Lynette Dawn Culver, Susan Curtis, Margaret Elizabeth Bowman, Lisa Levy, Kimberly Diane Leach, Melanie Cooley, Shelley Robertson, Deborah Stevenson, Linda Phillips, Anne Marie Burr, Lonnie Trumbull, Rita Curran, Joyce LePage, Rita Lorraine Jolly, Vicki Lynn Holler, Catherine Mary Devine, Brenda Joy Baker, Sandra Jean Weaver, Nancy Perry Baird.
From Rodney Carl's Trail of Devastation, Cornelia Quilly, Ellen Jane Hover, Jill Terry Barkham, Giorgio Norrie Wickstead, Christine Ruth Thornton, Charlotte Sue Lamb, Jill Ellen Parentel, Robin Christine Samso, Pamela Jean Lamson, Joyce Gaunt, and one still unidentified woman in Wyoming.
From Gerald and Charlene Gallegos' two-person killing machine, Kippy Vaught, Rhonda Scheffler, Brenda Judd, Sandra Coley, Stacy Ann Redican, Karen Chipman Twiggs, Linda Teresa Aguilar's unborn child, Virginia Mokel, Craig Miller, Mary Elizabeth Sowers, and Sandra Butler, who may never be confirmed.
From Lauren James Bland, Angela Pratt, Phoebe Ho, Wendy Osborne, Ruth M. Ost.
Samuel Little, the most prolific killer in U.S. history, Mary Jo Brosley, Linda Bennett, Carol Efford, Guadalupe Apodaca, Audrey Nilsson Everett, Patricia Parker, Mary Ann Jenkins, and 3 still unidentified black women in Nevada.
From Larry Hall's suspected spree, Jessica Lynn Roach, Naomi Lee Kidder, Tricia Lynn Reitler, Lori DePies, Wendy Felton.
From Royal Russell Long, Sharon Baldeagle, Carolyn Ann Brown, Charlotte June Kinsey, Cinda Lean Powlett, Carolyn Celeste Eaton, and one unnamed survivor who escaped.
From David Leonard Woods, West Texas Killing Field, Melissa Alanis, Desiree Wheatley, Karen Baker, Angelica Frosto, Rosa Marie Cassio, Dawn Marie Smith, Marjorie Knox, Cheryl Lynn Vasquez Dismukes,
Dale Wayne Eaton, whose silence still holds secrets, Lisa Marie Kimmel, Amy Roll Bechtold, Carlene Ann Brown, Naomi Lee Kidder, Star Valley Jane Doe, Devil's Gate Jane Doe, Thousand Springs Jane Doe, Shafter Jane Doe.
From Robert Ben Rhoades, The Truck Stop Predator, Candace Walsh, Douglas Scott Ziskowski, Regina K. Walters, Ricky Lee Jones, and one unidentified woman likely from Nevada.
Clark Perry Baldwin, Pamela Rose McCall, her unborn child, Bitter Creek Betty, now identified as Irene Lillian Vasquez, Sheridan County Jane Doe, now identified as Cindy Arlene Estrada, Cindy Arlene Estrada's unborn child, Tammy Jo Zawicki, Rhonda Knudsen.
From Robert Joseph Silvera Jr., The Boxcar Killer, Anthony Garcia, Darren Royal Miller, Willie James Clark, Michael A. Garfinkel, Roger Lee Bowman, James E. McLean, Charles Randall Boyd, Paul Wayne Matthews, William Avis Pettit Jr., Michael Andrew Kleitz, Michael A. Brandolino, and one unidentified man in Arizona.
From Scott William Cox, Rena Ann Brunson, Victoria Roan, Tia Hicks, Hazel Gelnett, Vicki Lynn Perkins, Stephanie Douglas, and one woman who survived but was never named.
From Joseph Nassau, the killer who kept a handwritten list. Roxine Ann Ragash, Carmen Lorraine Colon, Pamela Ruth Parsons, Tracy Lynn Tafoya, Nancy Lee Sellers, and 3 unidentified women, one of them found in Nevada.
And from Bobby Jack Fowler, Colleen McMillan, Sheila Swanson, Gail Ways, Maureen Louise Sterling, Yvonne Lisa Weber, Lori Lee Cursa, Carolyn Nadine Davis, Therese Walsh, Carrie Ann Graham, Francine Trimble, Monica Lohman, Pamela Darlene Lamson. For all of them, and for those that we haven't found yet. Some were schoolgirls, some were mothers, some were hitchhikers, waitresses, students, sisters, survivors. Some are still unnamed, still lying in the dust with only a case number and a location. But every one of them mattered. Every one of them was loved, or should have been, and every one of them deserves more than silence. We remember you. We speak your names. We carry your stories forward. Always. We've covered a lot of ground tonight, and none of it was easy. This wasn't about mystery. It wasn't about theory. It was about truth. Ugly, brutal, and long overdue, because what happened in the Great Basin wasn't just a coincidence. It was a storm, a perfect one. And for decades, predators moved through that storm with total freedom while the victims were buried in silence, but not anymore. So before we move on, what are your thoughts? Like, you haven't talked a lot. I've kind of been flapping my gums for the whole freaking episode, but where are you at?
Not in a good place.
It doesn't get much darker than this episode, honestly.
It's not in a good place.
It was tough to write. I mean, you go through that list of names and it's staggering. And it's a tiny fraction. I mean, Samuel Little's victims, if we knew them all, would be a list longer than that.
Yeah.
You know? And how many other of these pieces of shit are up? You know, I mean, we said on several of them 40 plus, 50 plus, 100 plus, 130 plus. I mean,
yeah,
it's unimaginable.
Unimaginable and disgusting.
Yeah.
So if this episode left you rattled, angry, or just wide awake, good. It should. That's the point. These victims deserve more than passing headlines and cold case labels. They deserve action, attention, justice. If you want to help push this work forward, visit darkdialogue.com. You can join the Dark Dialogue Collective, adopt a victim for research, or support us on Patreon and Ko-fi.
If you know something, anything about these cases that we've covered, a name, a memory, a location, a photo, send it. You can reach us directly at info@darkdialogue.com. And you know, like I said throughout the episode, and I'm going to say it again, if you have a missing loved one from this time period, you know, send the information. We'll do everything we can. I mean, the number of possible victims it's crippling. It's unbelievable. You know,
especially if you find it too hard to look through those pictures yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Feel free to send pictures. We'll look through the pictures for you. I mean, we'll do everything we can. Every tip matters. Every voice matters, especially yours.
You can also follow us on Substack for deep dive articles, transcripts, and case maps. Updated as new leads come in. John is very dedicated to that.
Doing the best I can.
And if you haven't already, please leave a review. It helps us bring these cases to more listeners, and it shows the algorithms. We're not just here to entertain. We're here to expose.
To everyone who's supported us, thank you. To the families still searching, we stand with you. And to the killers who thought time would hide their crimes, we're still here. We're still digging, and we won't stop until we make the guilty face the reckoning.